Hello, everyone. My name is KJ, and I am the host of Great Talking Entertainment official channel. And today video is my spoiler review for season 2 of Marvel Animation X-Men 97 episode 3 spoiler review. So if you have not seen this show, please pause this. And before you go and watch this amazing series, please, you guys could, in the bottom of your heart, could you hit the thumbs up button, aka the like button? That would help my YouTube channel out, and I truly appreciate that. Come back and let me know in the comments below of what you think for episode 3 of season 2 of X-Men 97 in the comments below. So, before I start my spoiler review, I'm gonna show you guys this little skit that I made, and then after this skit, I'm gonna do a deep dive into episode 3 for season 2 of X-Men 97. So please enjoy this skit. Now this Oh boy, I love this Godzilla Funko Pop. So cool, so cool. I wonder what would Godzilla do if he was in I don't know, the Star Wars universe? Man, I wonder what Darth Vader would do. Hmm. Wait a second. What's that noise? What am I looking at? What are you looking Can I have my cat back, please? Yes, you may have your cat back. Bye, Georgie. Come on, buddy. Let's get out of here. Oh, no. It. Now, this episode begins with the X-Men from the future back in their actually timeline at the X Mansion with Forge arguing about, well, not really the whole X-Men, but Cyclops and Forge are kind of arguing about should they go to the past and find them because the X-Men from who went to the past are not back yet with Bischoff. And but Forge is like, no way, we shouldn't do that due to the fact that again, the most important thing is which they've been foreshadowing this thing of not supposedly destroying the timeline, breaking timeline rules that we learned from the TVA, from like the Loki series and the movie Deadpool Wolverine and Avengers Endgame, of course. But they're foreshadowing the fact that they are going to break something. They are going to mess up the timeline in some way, some form, but who's going to do it? And this is why Forge is like telling Cyclops, we can't go back. We got to wait until they show up because of that. So that's a lot of arguing, but they're back in the main timeline, the future ones. But this, which takes us to the next scene where the X-Men that are in the past, which this goes all the way to in the year 3000 BC, we see that Magneto is trying to manipulate Ed Sabanur to, try to be the good guy in a way, trying to not do the thing that makes him become Apocalypse. And, we see him. This is Ed Sabanur is what he was before he becomes Apocalypse. And, you know, we see that they're using technology that Magneto and Professor X, Charles Xavier, feel like really doesn't belong in this timeline period, but he is in this era the first mutant, and ideally, even though historically in Marvel comic books that wasn't always the case. But hold on, We just know that in this point right now, he is the first mutant. But we see him getting ready to battle, and there's this character named Logos who is letting the other people know that in Sabonor, it and his army are heading towards them to fight through this sandstorm. And so there's a big battle that's going to happen. And again, Magneto feels like he can take Charles Xavier's dream, plan, goal in life and start it right here in this era and completely change everything. So, like I said been earlier, since episode 1 of season 2, they've been foreshadowing that the X-Men or a mutant that is associated with the X-Men is probably gonna break the timeline multiverse rules. I don't know if the TVA is gonna arrest them. I don't know yet, but I feel like they could show up in this. I'm convinced the TVA could show up in X-Men 97. And it's not probably gonna not it's not gonna be like I think it'd be a different group, a different director that represents the TVA, kind of like in Loki and Deadpool Wolverine. Two different directors, two different units, basically. That's what I'm thinking based off of this. But what I like about this is you can see this younger version of Apocalypse. He's just hungry, he's young, angry, and with Magneto who knows everything now and he understands like some of the mistakes he's made and the things that he's failed at, he's learned from them. And in a way Magneto is trying to do the right thing. But what's really interesting is in season 1, it was the idea that Magneto was right all along, but in this season based off of this episode, it's like, yeah, Magneto, you're completely wrong, and Charles Xavier is actually correct or right all along. Because everything Magneto tries to do, he just fails. He's not good. He's good at being the bad guy. He's good at being Magneto himself, but he's not being a good mentor. Not for somebody like Apocalypse. Definitely not like him. And his suave words of encouragement is just not cutting it, and we see this. But when they do fight, you know, this younger Apocalypse and his men, they're fighting and going, and again, Charles Xavier, he's like, there's no way you can convince this man to be a good guy. There's no way you can change his heart even in this timeline, in this year. No matter if it's 3000 BC or the year 2026 or whatever, you cannot change Apocalypse's heart or his destiny. And his destiny is to literally be one of the big bad villains of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So good luck, Magneto. But Charles Xavier is just not convinced. But Magneto, as he always does, he's gonna try. He's gonna put in the work and try this. And so what we see is this big battle. And oh my gosh, dude, like to see Apocalypse pick up this elephant. And I feel sorry for the elephant because it's just an animal. It's just an elephant. It didn't know what it's doing. He picks up the elephant and swings that mug, swings it like the Hulk, and throws this elephant into like this pyramid slash temple like thing. And this is where an interesting character that who has once enslaved a young Apocalypse and his family and friends. Now that person is Logos, and Logos is this guy that again, like I said earlier, he enslaved him. He enslaved his family. So Apocalypse did have parents, and also too, we see these robots. Like I don't. The best way I can explain about these robots, AI robots or Terminator robots, but Charles Xavier is against using Apocalypse and this technology to get back to their current timeline because you don't. They're trying to stop Apocalypse and avoid him, and so Charles Xavier is not good with. He's not a fan of this plan, but he's willing to. He's trying. He's trying it out because Charles Xavier doesn't have a lot of options in this thing, and so we see a young Apocalypse getting ready to take a Logo's head off, and his general, his right hand man, was like, "Yo, cut his head," because and this guy Logos was talking smack, and he swears like his leader, his god Ramtut, Ramatut, I should say Ramatut, is a Kang variant, Kang the Dynasty, and we'll talk about him later. But he's like, "Yo, you can get rid of me, but the plan's still gonna happen, and you're still gonna lose." And this young Apocalypse was getting ready to take down his little sword and cut his head, but he looked up, and Magneto's gave him the look like, "Don't do it, don't do it." And he tied it up. He tied up Logos, and was gonna use him as an example, basically, just a just a word to use to delay the inevitable. Now the next scene is we see Nightcrawler stealing all those robot parts, and we had Beast and Rogue trying to build a time machine to get back to their timeline. And yet Bischoff's nowhere to be found or seen, which is odd. So either he's captured or not, but they'll explain that later. But what's interesting is I love seeing Beast in this moment because he's smart. He's book smart, but building time machines is not his thing. Because he's telling Charles Xavier they need more power, and these robots like Terminator things are just not cutting it. So this leads to the part where Magneto and Charles Xavier are going to have to trust that this younger version of Apocalypse doesn't kill Logos because they need to get more information of how to use this technology because we know it's from Rama Tut, which is a Kanga Dynasty variant. And in comic books, it's just he goes every version of Kang. There's a Kang version in Multiverse, Kang the Conqueror, who goes back to the Egyptian time and brings technology from his future, from his Earth, to create a a world where he dominates, basically. And now they kind of explain they did explain this multiple times in the Loki series, season 1 and season 2, He Who Remains. They explain this in Ant-Man Quantumania about Kang the Conqueror. And so the whole idea is these Kang variants or were as since the Jonathan Major issue, which I don't have time to get into. But the story was Kang was the big bad boss, like Thanos level, that the Avengers would have to eventually team up one more time, or again, basically, and take on Kang the Conqueror. But plans has obviously changed, and now Marvel Studio is obviously going to Doctor Doom. But what I did find interesting is that they're using Kang the Conqueror in this episode, which is just Rama Tut. So that's a big deal. That's a big information. There's a lot of theories. But there's one theory I'm going to save later at the end of this episode that I want to say to y'all that I have a theory about. But I think it's very interesting because Logos is one of the disciples that worship Rama Tut, this king the conqueror guy. And we find out so much about this Logos without even talking about it that much in this episode. But what I like about this too is we're seeing again like this is Magneto failing, and this is Magneto being wrong all the time now because again, like this whole episode is just about, you know, can he keep Apocalypse just as in Sabanur versus his becoming Apocalypse, and he doesn't get it because throughout this episode, it's a very intense, dramatic dialogue that we see a lot through this, and a lot of action, a lot of fighting, of course. But it's very interesting that Ramatut is actually the one planting the seeds to take this younger Apocalypse to make him the Apocalypse that the X-Men know within the Marvel universe. So I thought that was pretty interesting too. Now, one of the next scenes is that we know that Apocalypse needs to take Ramatut's ship, which he does historically in comic books and in the old X-Men cartoon shows back in the day, like 90s and 2000s. He does take that ship and makes it his own ship. And they do like an interrogation with logos, and logos like really knows how to piss off Apocalypse. And but luckily Magneto stops him and says, "Hey man, like don't let somebody force you to do something that shows you weakness." And Charles Xavier comes in and tries to mind read logos. And what I thought was interesting is because he goes in his mind and it's green water, and it's reminding me of Loki. It's reminded me of the Loki series because as soon as he opens this one piece of a pyramid to get in Logo's mind, and we only know Charles Xavier finds out he only knows a little bit of what's going on, and all we see is like a tomb, a casket, which I have a theory about that too, and doesn't shows in there, but I feel like it could be this one X Men character. But we see Charles Xavier in a sand glass, and that's what kind of the sand glass of time is, and that's where Loki's at. Is like it's a time shape. Looks like a was the tree of life, as they call it in the Loki series. But this is very low key multiverse came the conqueror information. And so again, they're foreshadowing the fact that the timeline is somewhat going to be broken, which I do believe this will probably, to me, this ties into Avengers Doomsday and most likely a Avengers Secret War movie. That's what I'm thinking based off of this. But that's what I like about that because it's giving me the idea that they may be going this direction with this. But again, it was just really interesting. But what went, what everything went wrong though at this things start going wrong for the X Men for this point after this because they didn't get all the information about him from Logos. Logos is just crazy. He's a cult obsessed person, and then this young Apocalypse's right hand man, whose general finds the secret hideout of the X Men's laboratory and shows this young Apocalypse what's going on, and it breaks his trust between him and Magneto. And guess whose head gets cut off? Logos. And Magneto is in shock. He's scared to death. And this is where the X Men was about to get shot by arrows, but luckily Bischoff came, and and then we see the X Men fight a young Apocalypse. And can I just tell you, there is a scene in this episode where we see this young Apocalypse in Sabo Neuro, and it's like all foggy and dusty, and he was just aura farming of what Apocalypse looks like in the future, but it was just a younger him walking through this dust. And I thought that was really cool. I just want to put that out there. But it shows you, like, again, that we learned from Loki season one and season two, and Ant Man Quantumania, and I would probably say Avengers Endgame movie, that there's just some things that are just going to happen. It is destined to happen. Like, you cannot change it. Also, to add in Marvel What If, all the seasons of that. Because in Marvel What If, I forgot which season. I want to say season one or season two. There was a Marvel What If episode where Doctor Strange tried to bring back Christine back alive, and he just couldn't, and it just made him crazy. And he even tried the dark magic stuff, and it just wasn't working. Why? Because it was destined for her and that to die in that car crash in the Marvel What If episode. I think it was either season one or season two. It's one of those seasons. But that's the whole point. There's just some things in the MCU, whether it's the live action side of it or the animation side of it, there's just some things that are destined to happen. And Apocalypse becoming Apocalypse is destined to happen, right? Like, that can never change, apparently. And that's what Magneto learned. And he was just in shock. Now, after they cut Logo's head, he was actually somewhat of a half robotic AI person, kind of like what a lot of the mutants and humans did in season one of X-Men 97, where they took like in this virus that turned some of their body parts and their genetics into half robotic. And that's what Logos did, and it sent off a signal to Ramatut. So what's interesting is Ramatut, aka Kang the Conqueror, well, just a variant of him, came up with all this technology, came up with that virus that we seen in season one and this season. So that's very interesting because that tells me, like, number one, I guess they must have had a huge ideas and huge plans to use Kang the Conqueror with the X-Men before the again, the Jonathan Major issues. And some would say it was just because the movie Ant-Man Quantumania wasn't as good and stuff, which I'd say that's debatable. But hey, it's everybody's opinion, right? But they must have, and these plans must have made it to the plans for season two of X Men '97. Now, because it wouldn't be no coincidence that they're using Kang the Conqueror. In this one, he goes by the name of Ramatut. So it couldn't be coincidental as far as behind the scene plans, in my opinion. So they must have had something. And I would believe if they would have went to Avengers, because they did have a movie called Avengers: Kang the Dynasty, which they changed it to Doomsday, or they probably changed it to Secret Wars. But what I'm trying to say is like, it seemed like this was definitely going to tie into Avengers: King the Dynasty, and this show was gonna tie into the Loki and Ant Man Quantumania. And I think this was the original idea of reintroducing the X-Men in the MCU was through this show. But, you know, how long how long was the plan really set up? I don't really know creatively why, but it just that's where I got out of it. But because they haven't talked about this character since the issues with Jonathan Major. But another thing that I liked about this too is this does, in comic books, Kang the Conqueror and Apocalypse do interact a lot in comic book stories in the X Men Uncanny comic book issues and other stuff. But I really like how they're using it, and I just wonder if we're going to see any other King the Conqueror variants in the season. But it seems like they're hinting they should be some more variants of this, because I think what it is like this. I think Ramatut, aka King the Conqueror, is going to be the one that's going to stop Cable in his tracks and the X Men, and to make sure Apocalypse uh, exceeds his mission. I think Kane the Conqueror is pulling the strings in this story. And that's what I'm thinking based off of this episode. Because Ramatut hit a button where a big explosion, a big like blast from a machine that he created attacked everybody, and but luckily Bischoff got the other X-Men members, including Magneto, back to the current timeline where they're at. So now they have to replan and recuperate how they're going to defeat Apocalypse. Now, again, with all that being said, yeah, this story was heavily complex with time traveling issues and theories and foreshadowing, but it also sets it up with some more to make to make people more anticipate episode 4 and make it more exciting to see. I love the action in this. I love the dramatic. I just think sometimes when you talk about with Marvel now, when you do time travel and multiverse, when I mean complex, it means sometimes it may confuse the audience, the viewers, if you're really trying to pay attention like that. But I think they did it better in this episode as far as making it a simple time traveling story as best they could. Like, and really to focus more on Apocalypse and stuff. But I would say focus more on Apocalypse and try to make show that Apocalypse is going to be in different eras. So that's the simplest way they could have done it. But my theory that I have with King the Conqueror is I believe that maybe not using him in the live action, but I believe in theory that he's gonna be the next big bad villain for the X Men '97 series, and I think it's a safe play to do. But it can also re-amp and re-showcase why the Marvel character Kang the Conqueror is a huge threat to all the Marvel superheroes, and why he would be a tough opponent in storylines and protecting the world and watching the world to be destroyed. I think this is the a show you could reuse him and try to win forgiveness from for try to get forgiveness from Marvel fans, if that's even possible. In my opinion, it's what I'm thinking they're going with. Why they would show that character Ramatut in this series. My next theory is Gambit. The theory is I think Apocalypse from season 1 at the end of that episode we see Apocalypse hold like in Genosha Island a broken card, and it's like a king. And the theory is I think Apocalypse is going to reincarnate Gambit as the Horseman of Death, which that's been done in comic books before, and it's a really cool, interesting story. And it would make sense because in season 1, Gambit was jealous of Magneto because his relationship, Gambit and Rogue's relationship was kind of like in chambers because of the fact that Rogue cannot physically touch him because it would drain all his powers. But Magneto never had that issue because of his mutant abilities. So the relationship between Magneto and Rogue was real, but they never hooked up. But Gambit remembers that because he sacrificed himself to one of the Sentinels to protect them, and for Apocalypse to reincarnate him and put and convince him that he's the good guy would be an easy story to tell. And to see Gambit as the Horseman of Death would be really cool. Now, if he did go that route, his abilities for Gambit as the Horseman of Death, he would have this thing called the Death Charge, which it'll be breaking down living matter, basically. And then he could also create toxic gas. That means he can poison people. And he has a resistance to psychic powers. So nobody can read his mind and get to him. And it would be an interesting thing to see if Rogue can get through him if Apocalypse reincarnates Gambit as the Horseman of Death. That's what I think they're going to. That's what I believe. Like, and in a way, it would help Apocalypse take down the X-Men because I think Apocalypse has the technology to use that. So that's what I'm thinking. But those are my theories. What do you guys think? Do you think Kane the Conqueror is back? Do you think they're gonna bring back Gambit as the Horseman of Death? Let me know in the comments below. And if I had to give this episode a 1 out of 10, I definitely give it an 8. Really solid story. Complex a little bit because of the time traveling. It can be a little bit confusing for any audience, whether you've been following this or not really following it a lot. But but really excitement. They build it up for episode 4. So most people are gonna be really tuning in to watch episode 4, which I think that's released on a Monday or a Tuesday, something like that. But can't wait to see it. Really good episode. Love the dialogue. Love seeing just a little bit of origin story of Apocalypse. And I just love the plot twist and the character growth in this. So really awesome, guys. But that is my spoiler review, y'all. Thank you so much. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Great Talking Entertainment official channel. Subscribe, hit that notification button so you can always be updated with all my latest content. Thank you guys, and peace